The village elders turned their backs as he embarked on his hunting journey, their laughter and mockery following him up the treacherous mountain path like shadows that refused to fade. His hands trembled, not from fear, but from the condition that had made him an outcast among his own people since childhood. Before we continue this extraordinary tale of perseverance and unexpected triumph, if you believe in the power of the human spirit to overcome impossible odds, please subscribe to our channel. Not for 7 days, the young hunter vanished into the mist-shrouded peaks, where even the strongest warriors dared not venture alone, the villagers placing bets on whether he would return at all, or if the mountain would claim yet another soul deemed unworthy by its ancient judgment. Those who had tormented him since boyhood slept peacefully in their warm huts, never imagining that high above them a remarkable encounter was unfolding, one that would challenge everything they believed about strength, courage, and the true nature of a hunter's heart. What the young man discovered in the sacred cave beneath the summit would not only change his destiny forever, but would transform the future of his entire village, forcing those who had rejected him to question their most fundamental beliefs about weakness and power, about who truly deserves to lead, about what gifts the mountain chooses to bestow, and upon whom it decides to smile. Their separate trophies. But Talon knew he had just committed to the most dangerous path, the one leading to the highest reaches of the mountain, where legend said the spirits themselves dwelled, where his father had vanished 5 years before, where few ventured and fewer returned as the gathering dispersed. Talon felt a gentle hand on his arm turning to find Mara, the village healer, her face weathered by years, but her eyes still sharp with intelligence. "Come by my hut before you leave," she said quietly. "I have something that might help you on your journey." He nodded gratefully. Mara had been his father's friend, one of the few in the village who had never treated Talon with disdain, who had recognized his knowledge of plants and herbs as valuable rather than a poor substitute for hunting skills. She had taught him much over the years, though always discreetly, his interest in women's wisdom. Being yet another source of mockery among the village, Menelon returned to his home. To complete his preparations, his mother having already left unable to bear the public spectacle of the departure ceremony, her absence understandable, yet leaving an emptiness in their small hut, he carefully checked his supplies one final time. The modest rations, the water skin, the thin blanket, the hunting knife, spear, and sling, all essential, though far less than what the other hunters would carry, especially Goran, whose family status ensured he wanted for nothing before leaving. He visited Mara as promised, finding her grinding herbs in her small garden. "The high peaks are unforgiving," she said without preamble, "and more than mere storms and cliffs threaten those who venture there." Talon waited, knowing Mara's tendency to speak in her own time at her own pace. "Your father understood this," she continued, softer now. "He respected the mountain, saw it not merely as hunting grounds, but as a living entity with its own will, its own purpose." She pressed a small bundle, wrapped in leaves, into his hand. Bitter root to chew for strength, dream leaf to clear vision when fog clouds both mind and path, and this. She held up a small dark seed. "Swallow this only in greatest need when all seems lost. It will guide you to what you seek, though perhaps not in the way you expect." Talon accepted these gifts with appropriate reverence, knowing Mara did not give such things lightly. "What did my father find on the mountain?" he asked, the question that had burned within him for years. Mara's eyes grew distant. "Not what Goran and his kind would value," she replied cryptically. "Your father saw with different eyes, as do you, that is both your burden and your gift, Talon. Remember that when the mountain tests you," with those enigmatic words she turned back to her herbs. A clear dismissal. Talon tucked her offerings into his pouch alongside his mother's, gave silent thanks, then headed toward the village gate where the hunters would ceremonially depart the other. Young men were already gathered, their families surrounding them with proud embraces. Last-minute advice, gifts of food, or tokens for luck. Talon stood apart, watching Goran receive a magnificent new spear from his father, the metal tip gleaming in. The morning sun, a weapon far superior to Talon's simple wooden one, further evidence of the disparity between them. Corval called for silence, then raised his staff. May the spirits of the hunt guide your spears. May you return with honor to take your places among our hunters. His eyes swept across the assembled young men, lingering briefly on Talon with what might have been pity before he brought his staff down with a resounding crack against the earth. The signal to begin, the hunters departed, each taking different paths into the surrounding forests, their destinations predetermined by their pledges. Goran heading west toward the valleys, Talon alone, turning toward the steep trails that led to the upper mountain, the very path his father had taken on his final hunt. He felt the villagers' eyes on his back, heard the whispered wagers on how quickly he would return empty-handed, or whether he would return at all. But he kept his gaze fixed forward, remembering his father's words from long ago. The mountain does not judge as men do. It sees what lies beneath the surface, reaches the heart of things. The lower trails were familiar territory. Talon having often ventured this far to gather herbs and plants for his mother's cooking, or Mara's healing mixtures here in the solitude of the forest. His tremor lessened somewhat, as it always did away from judgmental eyes. The burden of others' expectations temporarily lifted. He moved with quiet efficiency, his knowledge of the terrain, allowing him to make good progress despite his physical limitations. By midday, he had reached the boundary where the familiar forests began to give way to steeper, rockier ground, the point beyond which he had rarely ventured. The real journey was about to begin as Talon paused to drink from a clear stream, checking his bearings against the sun's position. He reflected on the path that had led him here, the years of enduring sidelong glances and outright mockery, the constant effort to prove himself in a society that valued only one type of strength, the struggle to find his place when his hands betrayed him at every crucial moment. Yet alongside these painful memories were others, his father teaching him to recognize useful plants, to read animal tracks, to move quietly through the forest, his mother's unwavering belief in him, Mara's quiet insistence that knowledge came in many forms, that the village's narrow view of worth was itself a weakness. With renewed determination, Talon continued upward, the path growing steeper, the air cooler as he climbed the trees, becoming sparser, giving way to hardy mountain shrubs and exposed rock faces. By late afternoon, the mist had begun to descend the infamous cloud cover that gave the upper mountain its reputation for disorientation and danger. He found a small, protected overhang. As darkness approached, made a minimal camp without fire to avoid attracting predators or revealing his position to the mountain spirits that, legends said, patrolled these heights wrapped in his thin blanket. He ate a portion of his rations, conserving carefully, knowing the journey ahead would demand all his resources, both physical and spiritual. That night, Talon dreamed of his father not as he had last seen him, strong and confident, setting out on his final hunt, but as a spectral figure standing on a mountain peak, beckoning him toward a glowing cave entrance. The mountain's heart, his father's voice echoed, though his lips didn't move. Find the heart, Talon awakened with a start, the dream vivid in his mind, the first light of dawn barely visible through the lingering mist that shrouded his shelter. He packed, quickly consumed a small breakfast, then continued his ascent. The words from his dream echoing in his thoughts, the mountain's heart. What had his father meant? What had he found in these heights that had changed him or claimed him? As he climbed higher into the realm few from his village had ever seen, Talon felt a strange sense of belonging, as if, despite everything, the mountain had been waiting for him all along. His hands still trembled. Yes, but here there was no one to judge, no one to mock, only the ancient peaks, the swirling mist, and somewhere ahead, the answers. He had sought for 5 long years since his father vanished into this same unforgiving landscape. The second day of Talon's journey brought him into terrain. Few from Stonecrest ever witnessed the mist growing thicker as he ascended the air, noticeably thinner, making each step more demanding, the path, if it could still be called that, becoming. Treacherous narrow ledges and loose scree requiring careful navigation. Here his light build proved advantageous, allowing him to move where heavier hunters might have caused rock slides. Still, the tremor in his hands complicated every climb, every careful placement of his feet, the constant concentration exhausting his mind, as much as the climb exhausted his body. Around midday, he paused on a relatively flat outcropping to rest and replenish his strength, chewing a small piece of the bitter. Root Mara had given him its sharp taste, immediately spreading warmth through his tired limbs as he surveyed the vast landscape below the village. Now a tiny cluster of dots, the surrounding forests, a green carpet stretching toward distant plains. He spotted movement, a herd of mountain goats traversing what appeared to be an impossible cliff face, their hooves finding purchase on the slightest irregularities in the rock. Watching them, Talon realized they were following a natural path nearly invisible to human eyes, but clearly established through generations of use. The mountain offers paths to those who know how to look, his father had often said. Talon now understood this wisdom more deeply, deciding to follow the goat's route rather than continue his original course. The decision proved fortunate, as their path, though challenging, avoided the worst of the steep climbs while maintaining his upward progress. By late afternoon, he had reached an altitude where even the hardiest trees could no longer survive, only tough alpine grasses and small flowering plants clinging to life in the harsh environment. It was here, while examining a rare blue mountain flower, that he noticed the tracks barely visible in the rocky soil, but unmistakable to his trained eye. Wolf prints, larger than any he had seen in the lower forests. These belonging to the legendary white wolves, said to guard the upper reaches of the mountain, spiritual creatures in village lore, harbingers of change or doom, depending on the storyteller. Talon crouched, studying the prints, their direction, their depth. The story they told of a solitary hunter, moving with purpose across the mountainside, following some unseen prey. Curiosity and caution warred within him. Wolves represented both danger and opportunity. Dangerous opponents, but also potential guides to game if one knew how to interpret their movements. His father had taught him to respect rather than fear them, to understand their ways. Deciding to follow the tracks at a safe distance, Talon moved with renewed purpose, the wolf's path leading him through passages he might never have discovered on his own. As the day waned, the temperature dropped dramatically, the mist condensing into a fine drizzle that threatened to soak through his clothes, making the prospect of a night on the exposed mountainside increasingly dangerous. He needed shelter soon, the wolf tracks now disappearing on the harder ground, just as he was about to give up hope of finding suitable protection for the night. A darker shadow within the gathering gloom caught his attention. A narrow fissure in the mountainside, just wide enough for a person to slip through cautiously. Talon approached, spear ready, remembering stories of mountain predators using such caves as dens. He called out, producing only his own echo in response, then squeezed through the opening, finding himself in a small but dry cavern, the perfect shelter from the worsening weather. Outside, a quick inspection revealed no signs of recent animal habitation, though ancient claw marks scored one wall testament to past occupants. Relieved, Talon set down his pack and prepared his modest camp, the exertions of the day making even the stone floor seem inviting as he laid out his blanket. It was only as he settled against the back wall, conserving warmth, that Talon noticed the faint markings above his head, brushing away decades of dust and soot. He revealed what appeared to be paintings, ancient depictions of hunters, not with spears or bows, as he might have expected, but with outstretched hands receiving something from stylized mountain shapes above them, the objects in their hands emitting rays like small suns, curiosity overcoming. His fatigued Talon examined the paintings more closely, finding repeated symbols, patterns he didn't recognize, but that clearly held meaning to those who had created them. The most striking image showed a figure with trembling lines emanating from their hands, standing before what appeared to be a cave entrance, rays of light streaming onto them, transforming the trembling lines into steady strength. Talon stared, transfixed, his own hands shaking slightly as he traced the ancient artwork, wondering at its meaning, at the strange coincidence, or perhaps not coincidence at all, of finding such a specific depiction here on his journey. Was this what his father had discovered as well? Had he followed the same path, seen these same paintings? What had they meant to him? The third day brought clearing skies but colder temperatures, ice forming on exposed rock faces, making the already difficult terrain. Treacherous Talon moved carefully, testing each step. His progress slow but steady, the higher. Altitude affecting his breathing, requiring frequent stops to recover the painted images from the cave lingering in his mind, becoming intertwined with his father's dream words. The mountain's heart. As he climbed, Talon gathered small samples of alpine herbs, securing them carefully in separate pouches, automatically cataloging their properties as Mara had taught him. While most in the village saw little value in such knowledge, she had recognized his aptitude had nurtured his understanding of the healing arts as complementary to hunting, not inferior to it. By midday, Talon reached a plateau offering momentary respite from the constant climb, the view extending in all directions, revealing the true vastness of the mountain range. The multiple peaks, the hidden valleys, the play of light and shadow across their ancient faces. Here, in this place of spectacular beauty and profound isolation, he felt simultaneously insignificant and connected, part of something greater than himself, greater than Stonecrest, greater than the artificial hierarchies men created to measure worth. He sat in silent contemplation, allowing this feeling to wash over him. The tremor in his hands temporarily subsiding in this moment of peace. The tranquility was broken by the distant cry of a mountain goat in distress, followed by the unmistakable sounds of falling rock. Talon rose immediately, moving toward the sound over the next ridge, finding a young goat trapped on a narrow ledge, a recent rock slide. Having blocked its path forward and back, the animal's fear palpable as it balanced precariously above a deadly drop, its predicament mirroring Talon's own situation in Stonecrest, trapped between impossible expectations and the abyss of permanent exclusion. Carefully, he studied the terrain, looking for a safe approach, a way to help, without endangering himself or further frightening the animal, working slowly, methodically. Talon used his spear to clear smaller rocks, creating a path the goat might use, once calmed, speaking in low, soothing tones as he worked gradually. The animal's panic subsided, its intelligent eyes watching him with growing trust rather than fear. When the path was cleared, Talon stepped back, giving the goat space to make its own choice. After a moment's hesitation, it moved carefully along the newly created route, rejoining its herd, which watched from above, once safe. The goat turned, looking directly at Talon, before leading its companions along a nearly invisible mountain path, one that continued upward toward the higher peaks. The mountain rewards compassion, his father had once told him after helping a fox kit return to its den. Not all hunting involves taking life. Sometimes the greatest strength is shown in preserving it. Watching the goats ascend, Talon made his decision to follow their path, feeling an inexplicable certainty that they were leading him toward his destination, toward whatever his father had found, toward the heart of the mountain itself. As lightning illuminated the cavern walls, Talon froze his breath, catching at the sight of ancient paintings depicting hunters, not with spears or bows, but with open hands, receiving something from the mountain itself, something that glowed. With its own light, something the ancestors had apparently valued more than any game they might have pursued. The fourth day dawned clear and cold, Talon emerging from his shelter to a transformed landscape overnight frost, having painted every surface with delicate crystals that sparkled in the early light, creating a scene of otherworldly beauty. The air, so crisp it almost hurt to breathe, the silence absolute, save for the occasional distant cry of a soaring eagle. He ate sparingly of his dwindling supplies, knowing he would need to either find game soon or begin his descent back to more hospitable elevations. The thought of returning empty-handed sent a wave of dread through him, imagining Goran's triumphant smirk, the elder's disappointed but unsurprised expressions, his permanent assignment to the ranks of village laborers. Pushing these thoughts aside, Talon gathered his meager belongings and continued upward, following the path the mountain goats had shown him the day before, the terrain growing increasingly challenging, requiring all his concentration, the tremor in his hands making each handhold, each careful placement of his spear for balance, a conscious effort. By midday, he had reached an area of the mountain he suspected few, if any, from Stonecrest had ever seen massive stone formations jutting from the mountainside like the bones of some ancient giant, the wind having carved them into fantastic shapes over countless centuries. It was here, in this alien landscape, that Talon spotted his first potential game, a mountain hare, its coat already turned white for winter, nearly invisible against the patchy snow. But for its movement as it foraged among the sparse vegetation, excitement coursed through him. A successful hunt would mean meat to sustain his journey further upward, proof of his skills despite his condition. Carefully he readied his sling, a weapon he could sometimes manage better than the spear when his tremor was mild approaching. Slowly downwind of his prey, the hare continued its feeding, unaware of his presence. Talon took his position, the familiar, trembling intensifying with the pressure of the moment. 3 times he attempted the shot. 3 times. His shaking hands caused the stone to fly wide. The hare, finally alerted to his presence, bounding away across the rocks, disappearing into the vastness of the mountain. Talon cursed softly, frustration and hunger warring within him. This familiar failure, a painful reminder of why the village considered him unfit to be a hunter. Taking a deep breath, he centered himself as Mara had taught him, accepting the moment for what it was, without judgment, without self-recrimination. The mountain provides for those who listen. His father had said, not always what we hunt, but what we need. Continuing his journey, Talon focused on his surroundings, noting edible plants, gathering what he could to supplement his provisions. Though meager sustenance, compared to the meat he had hoped for, it would keep him moving forward as the afternoon waned. The wind increased, bringing with it the unmistakable scent of approaching snow, the temperature dropping rapidly. Warning of an incoming storm, Talon knew he needed to find substantial shelter soon or risk freezing in the open. The memories of hunters lost to sudden mountain blizzards vivid in his mind, quickening. His pace, he searched for any sign of a cave, an overhang, anything that might offer protection from the deadly cold. The first snowflakes were already falling when Talon spotted a dark opening in the mountainside, partially hidden behind a massive boulder relief, flooding through him as he made his way toward it. The wind now howling around the stone formations, creating an eerie whistling, like the mountain itself was speaking in some ancient forgotten language. Reaching the opening, he discovered it was larger than it had appeared, a proper cave entrance rather than a mere depression in the rock. Hastily, he gathered what dry brush he could find from the protected side of the boulder, then squeezed through the narrow opening into the darkness. Beyond, inside, the temperature was noticeably warmer, the cave providing a welcome barrier against the intensifying storm outside. Talon produced a small fire starter from his pack, one of the few luxuries he had allowed himself carefully nursing. A tiny flame, using the driest materials from his gathered brush, building it slowly until he had a small but adequate fire, casting flickering light on the cave walls, revealing that this space extended deeper into the mountain than he had initially realized, an unusual formation for these heights, where most caves were shallow, wind-carved hollows. As the storm raged outside, Talon sat beside his small fire, warming his hands, examining his supplies, taking stock of his situation. He had been traveling for 4 days, climbing higher than any of the other hunters would have ventured, yet had secured no game, had found nothing that would validate his journey in the eyes of the village, the bitter reality of his limitations settling over him like the snow blanket now covering the mountain above. Perhaps Goran had been right. Perhaps the mountain offered nothing to the weak. Perhaps his father's mysterious disappearance had been nothing more than a skilled hunter finally meeting conditions that exceeded even his considerable abilities. These dark thoughts circled through Talon's mind as he stared into the flames, the warmth and exhaustion gradually lulling him toward sleep, his eyes growing heavy, the firelight playing tricks on his vision, creating shifting shadows that seemed almost deliberate, as if trying to communicate something just beyond his understanding in this state, between wakefulness and dreams. He thought he saw a figure standing at the edge of the firelight, tall, indistinct, yet somehow familiar. "Father," he whispered. But the apparition, if it had been there at all, vanished as he blinked, leaving only darkness beyond the small circle of light sleep claimed him. Eventually his dreams filled with images from the cave paintings, hunters with outstretched hands receiving the mountain's gift, his father calling to him from a glowing cavern entrance, a white wolf leading him along hidden paths. The sensations so vivid he could almost feel the rough stone beneath his fingers, smell the distinctive mineral scent of deep earth, hear the whispering voice of the mountain speaking in words just beyond comprehension. He awakened with a start, disoriented, the fire reduced to embers, the cave in near darkness, save for a faint illumination coming from deeper within, a soft blue-white glow that had not been there when he fell asleep. Fully alert, now Talon stared at the mysterious light, his practical mind suggesting phosphorescent fungi or minerals, his deeper instincts whispering of other possibilities, remembering Mara's dream leaf. He retrieved a small portion from his pouch, chewing it slowly as she had instructed, the bitter taste flooding his mouth, followed by unusual clarity, his senses heightening, the cave coming into sharper focus, the glow seeming to pulse slightly, as if beckoning him forward, gathering his courage and his spear. Talon moved toward the light, leaving the dying fire behind each step, taking him deeper into the mountain's embrace. The passage narrowing in places, requiring him to turn sideways to continue, then widening again, the glow growing stronger, illuminating a path that showed signs of great age, smooth depressions in the stone floor where countless feet had walked. Before him, after what seemed both moments and hours of careful progress, the passage opened suddenly into a vast underground chamber, the source of the light revealed as crystal formations embedded in the walls and ceiling, casting their ethereal, blue-white illumination throughout the space, the air here noticeably warmer, carrying strange scents, both mineral and organic. The chamber's floor dropping away to form a natural basin where an underground spring had created a small lake, its surface perfectly still reflecting the glowing crystals like stars captured in dark water at the center of the chamber. Standing like an altar was a raised stone platform, ancient carvings covering its surface, similar to those Talon had seen in the earlier cave, but more elaborate, more detailed, telling a story he couldn't yet decipher. Talon's fingers traced the cold stone wall, searching for any path upward, when suddenly beneath his touch the rock felt different, smoother, almost warm, and as his eyes adjusted to the darkness, he realized with a jolt of fear and wonder that What he had thought was mere shadow was actually an opening, a passage leading deeper into the mountain's heart, passage marked with the same glowing symbols he had seen in the paintings. The passage beckoned Talon forward, the glowing symbols pulsing subtly, as if alive, as if aware of his presence. He hesitated at the threshold, remembering village tales of mountain spirits that lured unwary travelers to their doom. Yet something deeper than caution pulled at him, a certainty that this path was meant for him, had perhaps been waiting for him, recalling Mara's seed for greatest need when all seems lost. He removed it from his pouch, studying its dark, wrinkled surface in the crystal light before placing it on his tongue, the bitter taste spreading immediately as he swallowed with a deep breath. Talon stepped through the opening, surrendering to whatever lay ahead. The passage descended steeply, requiring careful navigation. In places, Talon had to slide down smooth stone chutes. In others, climbed down natural formations like stairs carved by water over millennia, the crystal light growing stronger with each step downward, the air warmer, carrying scents he couldn't identify. Earthy but also sweet, like flowers that never saw sunlight. His trembling hands now seemed attuned to the passageway's vibration, as if the mountain itself thrummed with subtle energy that matched his body's own rhythm rather than hindering his. Progress his condition now seemed almost an advantage, allowing him to sense shifts in the stone, to anticipate drops and turns before they appeared. How long he traveled through the winding passage. Talon couldn't tell, time seeming to stretch and compress in this underground realm where sun and stars provided no reference. Eventually, the descent leveled out the passage, widening into another chamber, this one vast beyond imagining, its ceiling lost in darkness despite the abundant crystal. Like its far walls, barely visible across an underground lake larger than Stonecrest Village itself, the water black and still reflecting the countless glowing crystals embedded in the surrounding stone, creating the illusion of standing in the vault. Night sky surrounded by stars above and below, the beauty of it, stealing Talon's breath, making him forget momentarily the pain of his journey, the uncertainties that awaited his return. The center of the vast lake rose a small island connected to the shore by a natural stone bridge just wide enough for a person to cross. Upon the island stood what appeared to be an altar, ancient and weathered, surrounded by crystal formations, larger than any in the chamber walls, their light pulsating. Slowly, in unison, like a massive heartbeat, the mountain's heart, his father's words echoing in Talon's mind. This was it, the place from his dreams, the destination his father had discovered before him. With reverent steps, he crossed the bridge, feeling each footfall resonating through the chamber, as if the mountain acknowledged his presence, measured his worth in ways far different from the village elders. As Talon approached the altar, his exhaustion, injuries, and hunger caught up with him, his legs buckling beneath him, sending him to his knees on the smooth stone of the island, his pack sliding from his shoulders, spilling its meager contents, his water skin, his remaining food, his father's knife. The symbols around the altar's base now, at eye level, seemed to shift and move in his vision, forming patterns that almost resembled words in an alphabet, too ancient to comprehend the Mara seed's effects, perhaps, or some property of this place affecting his perception. Either way, Talon found himself slipping between consciousness and something deeper, a state beyond sleep, beyond dreaming, where the boundary between self and mountain, between present and past, between reality and vision, blurred and dissolved. A figure materialized. Before him, translucent, glowing with the same blue-white light as the crystals, an ancient hunter dressed in furs, carrying not a spear, but a staff topped with crystal. The figure studied Talon with eyes that held wisdom beyond human years. "You come, seeking the mountain's gift." The spirit spoke the words, resonating in Talon's mind rather than his ears. "As did your father before you, as did many before him." Talon struggled to respond, his voice weak. "What happened to my father?" he managed the question that had driven him to this place. The spirit's expression remained impassive. "He made his choice as you must make yours. The mountain offers, but does not impose. Its gifts come with conditions." The spirit gestured to the altar, where images appeared like reflections in water, showing Talon's father standing in this very spot 5 years earlier, facing the same spectral hunter. He chose to remain with the mountain, to become its guardian, to learn its deepest wisdom. The revelation struck. Talon, like a physical blow, his father alive but transformed, chosen rather than lost. The village rumors of his mysterious fate, containing a kernel of truth yet missing the profound reality. "And what does the mountain offer me?" Talon asked, his trembling hands pressed against the stone floor to support himself. The spirit's gaze intensified. "You seek to prove yourself as a hunter, to return with trophy and triumph, to silence those who mock your trembling hands." It wasn't a question, but Talon nodded anyway. The simple truth of his initial motivation laid bare beneath the crystal light. "Yet your hands tremble, not from weakness, but from sensitivity." The spirit continued, "They feel what others cannot, the mountain's pulse, the rhythm of life itself. This that your village calls affliction is actually attunement." The spirit moved closer, hovering just before Talon. "The mountain does not value the hunter who takes the most, but the one who sees what others cannot, who gives back what is taken, who carries balance within. Show me what you offer in exchange for the mountain's gift." Talon looked down at his scattered possessions. What could he possibly offer that would satisfy a mountain? What gift could balance the scale of whatever he might receive? The answer came with sudden clarity. Reaching for his father's knife, he drew it across his palm, creating a shallow cut, allowing his blood to drip onto the altar. "I offer connection." He said the words emerging from some deeper wisdom than his conscious mind. "My blood, my service, my protection of the mountain's gifts from those who would exploit them." He placed his bleeding hand directly on the altar stone, feeling an immediate resonance, a humming energy that traveled up his arm through his body, connecting him to the very stone beneath him. The spirit nodded, with something approaching approval. "The mountain accepts your offering." Crystals around the altar began to glow more intensely, their light pulsating in perfect synchronization with Talon's heartbeat. With the tremor in his hands that now seemed less affliction than attunement, one crystal directly before him detached from its base, floating into the air between them, smaller than the others, but with a light that seemed to contain all colors at once. "This is the mountain's gift," the spirit intoned. "A crystal of healing. When combined with your knowledge of plants, its power amplifies, tenfold capable of curing ailments. No village healer has remedies for, but remember, what is given can be taken. The gift requires balance. What heals can also harm in careless hands." Talon's trembling fingers closed around the luminescent crystal. Something extraordinary happened instead of his hand. Shaking the crystal itself seemed to absorb the tremor pulsing in rhythm with his heartbeat, connecting to him in ways he couldn't comprehend but could deeply feel. "The mountain does not value the hunter who takes the most," the spirit's voice echoed, "but the one who sees what others cannot, who gives back what is taken, who carries the balance within." Talon awoke beside the altar, uncertain how long he had been unconscious. The spirit nowhere to be seen, though. The chamber remained illuminated by the steady glow of countless crystals. For a moment, he wondered if the entire encounter had been a dream or hallucination brought on by exhaustion and Mara's seed, until he felt the weight in his hand, opening his fingers to reveal the crystal, the mountain's gift, its light pulsing gently in perfect rhythm with his heartbeat, his tremor noticeably reduced when in contact with the stone, rising slowly. Testing his balance, he felt surprisingly refreshed. The hunger and fatigue that had plagued him seemingly diminished, as if the mountain itself had restored his strength. exploring the island Talon, discovered other crystals of varying sizes and colors embedded in the stone surrounding the altar. While none detached at his touch, he found he could sense their properties through the crystal. He held some, resonating with healing energy, others with vitality, still others with calming influence. Carefully, he harvested small samples of the unique subterranean plants growing between the crystal formations, their properties unknown to him, yet somehow familiar when viewed through the lens of his gift, his hunter's pack, now repurposed to carry medicines rather than game as he worked. Talon noticed something remarkable. The tremor that had defined his life, that had made him an outcast in Stonecrest, nearly disappeared when he held the crystal, allowing him unprecedented precision in gathering the delicate plants and preparing tinctures using water from the underground lake combined with herbs from his existing supplies. The crystal seemed to amplify the medicinal properties, creating remedies far more potent than any Mara had taught him to make. It was as if his lifelong knowledge of plants combined with this new gift had transformed him into something his village had no name for, neither traditional hunter nor healer, but something bridging both worlds, a balanced path, he murmured, remembering the Spirit's words about giving back what is taken, about seeing what others cannot. The revelation blooming within him that perhaps his inability to excel as a conventional hunter had not been a curse, but a redirection toward a different strength, one equally valuable, though unrecognized in Stonecrest's narrow definition of worth. Perhaps his father had experienced similar understanding, here in this sacred place, had chosen to remain rather than return to a village that could not comprehend the mountain's true gifts. Stalin spent what felt like hours, though time remained difficult to measure in the subterranean chamber, experimenting with his newfound abilities, creating a small collection of crystal-enhanced remedies carefully wrapped in leaves and stored in his pack. He selected several crystals from the chamber walls, those that came away easily with minimal disturbance to their surroundings, understanding intuitively that balance required taking only what was needed, leaving the majority undisturbed. Eventually, though, his practical nature reasserted itself, reminding him that he had been in the mountain for days, that the proving hunt had a time limit, that regardless of what he had discovered here, he would need to return to Stonecrest to face whatever awaited him. Therewith, reluctance Talon prepared to leave the sacred chamber, gathering his belongings, checking that the crystal was secure around his neck, on a leather cord he had fashioned before approaching the altar, one final time placing his hand upon the ancient stone. "Thank you," he said simply, feeling somehow that the mountain could hear him, understand him. "I will honor your gift. Use it with wisdom. Protect your secrets from those who would exploit them." A subtle vibration passed through the stone beneath his palm, acknowledgement perhaps, or blessing the crystals around him, pulsing once in unison, illuminating the chamber with intensified brilliance before returning to their steady glow, following a different tunnel than the one that had brought him here. Talon ascended through the mountain's interior, the crystal around his neck guiding him somehow, its light brightening when he chose, correct paths dimming when he strayed the journey upward, physically demanding yet somehow less taxing than his descent had been, as if the mountain itself smoothed his path. Now that he carried its blessing, several hours of climbing brought him to a small opening in the mountainside, emerging into late afternoon sunlight, disorienting. After the timeless quality of the underground realm, Talon blinked, adjusting to the brightness, surveying his surroundings to determine his location, discovering he had emerged higher on the mountain than he had entered, on a slope overlooking vast forested valleys he had never seen before. From this vantage point he could make out game trails, natural water sources, sheltered glades, rich with plants, all invisible from the paths most hunters would take, all revealed now through his enhanced perception, the combination of the crystal's influence and his existing knowledge showing him the mountain's abundance in ways he had never imagined movement. Caught his eye a flash of white against the rocky terrain, drawing his attention to a magnificent white mountain lion limping across a nearby ridge, its shoulder bearing a bloody wound likely from a fall or perhaps a fight with another predator. Without conscious thought, Talon found himself moving toward the injured animal, the crystal warming against his skin, his healer's instincts overriding the hunter's caution that would normally keep him far from such a dangerous predator. The great cat turned toward him as he approached, its golden eyes regarding him with intelligence beyond any animal he had encountered, yet showing no aggression despite its pain. "I can help," Talon said softly, knowing the words themselves meant nothing to the creature, but hoping his tone, his energy conveyed his intention. He removed a poultice from his pack, one enhanced by the crystal's power, keeping his movements slow, deliberate, his eyes meeting the lion's, maintaining connection. Slowly, he extended, his hand holding the medicine, the lion watching motionless, before taking a single step forward, then another bringing itself within Talon's reach, an act of trust so profound it took his breath away. With gentle hands that no longer trembled, Talon's applied the poultice to the wound, the crystal around his neck glowing brightly as the medicine made contact with injured flesh. The effect was immediate, the wound beginning to close before his eyes, the lion's tense muscles relaxing, a rumbling purr emanating from its chest as relief spread through its powerful body. Talon remained, kneeling beside the great predator, all replacing fear, as he witnessed the crystal's healing power, amplifying his herbal knowledge beyond anything possible in the Yuan village. The lion turned its massive head, licking his hand once with a rough tongue before stepping away, regarding him with what could only be described as respect, the encounter feeling sacred, profound beyond the simple act of tending a wound. The sun began its descent toward the western peaks. The lion turned, padding away a few steps before looking back at Talon, clearly intending for him to follow this unexpected guide, leading him along hidden mountain paths he would never have discovered. Alone paths that wound through areas rich with medicinal plants, crystal formations visible to his now attuned eyes, even game that moved aside rather than fleeing. As he passed the white lion, a spirit guardian perhaps, or simply an animal that recognized in Talon something kindred, a protector rather than a threat, a healer rather than a hunter. By traditional definition, that night they made camp together on a protected ledge, the lion resting nearby as Talon prepared a small meal from plants and roots gathered during their journey, combined with his remaining rations, the great cat accepting a portion with dignity. Before grooming itself, settling into watchful rest, Talon leaned back against the mountain stone, the crystal warm against his chest, the tremor in his hands, now something he could control through connection with the gift he had been given. Looking out over the moonlit landscape below, he found himself wondering what awaited his return to Stonecrest, how he might explain what he had discovered, how the village would receive a hunter who returned not with game, but with healing. Dawn broke clear and cold, the sun's first rays painting the mountain peaks with golden light. Talon awakened to find the white lion already alert, watching over him with its steady amber gaze, the bond formed between them unlike anything he had experienced with humans or animals alike, based not on dominance or utility, but on mutual respect, recognition of kindred spirits. After a simple breakfast, Talon gathered his belongings, checking that the crystal was secure against his chest before looking to the great cat for guidance on their day's journey. The lion rose, stretching powerfully, muscles rippling beneath its white coat, before leading him along a ridge overlooking a sweeping valley below. As they traveled, Talon began to understand the mountain's geography in new ways, seeing how the paths connected, how water flowed beneath the surface, how plants grew in patterns that told stories about soil and sun. His perception enhanced by the crystal's influence, his previous knowledge of herbs and tracking, merging with this new awareness to create understanding. No formal teaching could provide. The lion moved with silent grace, pausing occasionally to allow Talon to gather particularly potent plants or to indicate crystal formations. Hidden among ordinary rocks, formations invisible to untrained eyes but clearly significant to both Mountain Guardian and newly appointed Crystal Keeper. By midday, they had descended to a sheltered valley one Talon suspected few from Stonecrest had ever discovered, rich with game-pristine water and plants of remarkable medicinal value. Here, the lion stopped at the edge of a small clearing, looking meaningfully at Talon, then at the abundant resources surrounding them. "This is a gift, too," Talon realized aloud. Knowledge of this place. The lion blinked slowly in what seemed like confirmation before settling on a sun-warmed rock to watch as Talon methodically explored the area, cataloging plants, harvesting small samples, establishing in his mind the location's landmarks so he could return if needed. The valley, a treasure beyond price for someone with his unique combination of abilities as Talon worked the crystal. Guiding his selections, he found himself contemplating his return. To the village, the challenge of explaining what he had discovered. Traditional hunters like Garan would see no value in plants, and crystals would mock his white lion companion as fantasy or exaggeration. The elders, steeped in generations of valuing meat and hides above all else, might dismiss his gifts as trivial compared to the great elk Goran had pledged to bring down. Yet Talon also realized with growing certainty that he no longer needed their validation, no longer measured his worth by their limited standards. The mountain had shown him a different path, one equally vital to his community's well-being. If they could expand their understanding of value, the afternoon brought them to a high vantage point overlooking an unexpected sight. A small group of hunters from another village Talon didn't recognize struggling against a sudden rock slide. Their shouts carrying faintly on the wind, their situation clearly desperate. As boulders continued to rain down around them, the white lion tensed beside him, watching intently, as if assessing Talon's reaction to this test. Without hesitation, Talon began making his way down toward them, moving with newfound surety across terrain that would have challenged him days earlier. The crystal, warm against his skin, seeming to guide his steps, stabilize his balance, allow him to navigate the treacherous descent with unprecedented confidence. Reaching the hunters, Talon found two injured by falling rocks, one with a badly broken leg, the other with a deep gash across his shoulder, their companions trying unsuccessfully to move them to safety before the unstable slope above released more deadly debris. "I can help," Talon called, approaching. Despite their wary expressions, their hands moving instinctively to weapons at the sight of a stranger emerging from the mountainside, he showed his empty hands in the universal gesture of peace before indicating the crystal around his neck. "I have medicine knowledge of safe paths." The injured men's pain overrode any suspicion their companions might have harbored, allowing Talon to approach, kneel beside them, and begin his work. The crystal glowed visibly as he applied poultices to the wounded shoulder, closing the gash with remarkable speed, then turned his attention to the broken leg using skills he'd learned from Mara. Combined with the crystal's power to ease pain, set the bone and create a stable splint from materials at hand. The hunters watched in astonishment as injuries that would normally take weeks to heal showed immediate improvement, allowing the wounded men to stand, albeit gingerly ready to be guided to safety. "There's a sheltered cave beyond that ridge," Talon explained, pointing toward a path only he could see with his enhanced perception. "Follow me. I'll lead you there before the next slide comes." They made their way carefully across the unstable terrain, Talon in the lead, the crystal subtly warning him of dangerous areas, guiding him toward stable Footing the injured men, supported by their companions following his exact path, the white lion watching from above, visible only to Talon, a silent guardian ensuring their safe passage when they reached the cave deep enough to provide protection. From both rock slides and weather, the hunters' gratitude was evident in their faces, their earlier suspicion replaced by respect, bordering on awe. "We are from the eastern village of Ridgecrest," their leader explained as they settled the injured. "Men comfortably. I am Kalen Headhunter. What is your name?" "Healer. And how came you by such powerful medicine?" "I am Talon of Stonecrest," he replied, the words feeling strange, somehow inadequate to describe who he had become during his mountain journey. "I was on my proving hunt when the mountain revealed its gifts to me." He touched the crystal, briefly, its light pulsing in response to his contact, visible to all present. Kalen's eyes widened. "The Crystal Keeper," he whispered. "Our village has stories of such chosen ones, those to whom the mountain reveals its heart, but none have been known in living memory." The other hunters murmured among themselves, clearly impressed by what they were witnessing. "Our healer would give much to speak with you. Learn from you," Kalen continued. "Your village must value your gifts greatly." Talon hesitated, uncertain how to explain Stonecrest's values, the likelihood that his return would be met with disappointment rather than celebration. Something in his expression must have revealed his thoughts, for Kalen's face softened with understanding. "Not all villages recognize true worth when they see it," he said quietly. "Know that Ridgecrest would welcome a Crystal Keeper with highest honor should you ever seek a new home." The offer hung in the air, unexpected, yet somehow not surprising, the mountain perhaps having guided Talon to this encounter for reasons beyond mere rescue, making him aware of possibilities, beyond Stonecrest's borders, beyond the limited future he had always assumed was his only option. "I must complete my journey, return to my village with what I have learned," Talon replied, though he filed away Kalen's offer in his mind, a seed planted that might someday grow. "But I thank you for your words." The conversation turned to practical matters, Talon providing additional medicine instructions for caring for the injured men in the days ahead, sharing some of his gathered herbs, teaching them to recognize plants that might help them on their journey home in return. Kalen shared information about game movements, weather patterns, details that might prove useful. As Talon continued his own path, each man recognizing the value in the other's knowledge. The exchange, itself a form of balance, giving and receiving that reflected the mountain's fundamental wisdom. Evening approached. Talon took his leave, the white lion reappearing as he moved beyond the hunter's sight, leading him to a protected overhang where they could rest for the night as Talon prepared a small meal. He reflected on the day's events, the rescue, the unexpected connection with hunters from another village, the gradual clarification of his purpose, not merely to heal physical wounds, but perhaps to heal the divisions between different types of knowledge, different forms of strength, different ways of serving one's community. The crystal warm against his chest seemed to pulse in agreement as the stars emerged above, mirroring the crystal lights he had seen in the mountain's heart below. The seventh day of Talon's journey dawned with the realization that the proving hunt's traditional time limit had arrived by sunset. He was expected to return to Stonecrest with his prize or face permanent assignment to the laborer's ranks. The mountain had transformed him, given him gifts beyond imagining, yet by the village's narrow measures, he would return empty-handed. No elk, no deer, not even a rabbit to prove his worth as a hunter. The white lion seemed to sense his thoughts, golden, eyes studying him with uncanny perception as they shared a morning meal of berries and roots gathered from the surrounding slopes. "They won't understand, will they?" Talon said softly to his companion. "They'll see only what I failed to bring, not what I found." The lion's response was to rise and lead him along a new path, one descending gradually toward familiar territory, yet passing through areas Talon had never seen, remarkable for their abundance, game trails, clearly visible water sources, rich with animal tracks, plants both common and rare growing in profusion. As they traveled, Talon began to understand he was being shown hunting grounds of extraordinary quality, areas that could sustain Stonecrest through many seasons if properly managed. If approached with the balance the mountain valued, here was another gift, knowledge that might bridge his new understanding with the village's traditional needs, might allow him to communicate his transformation in terms they could comprehend. By midday they had reached a sheltered valley where a small herd of deer grazed peacefully, unaware of their presence. The white lion settled onto a rock overlooking the scene. Its meaning clear. This too was a test, or perhaps an offering. Talon's hand moved automatically to his spear, then hesitated, the crystal warm against his chest, seeming to pulse with question. He was no longer merely a hunter seeking to prove himself, yet his village needed meat to survive the coming winter months. Balancing these truths represented yet another aspect of his new path, taking only what was needed, giving back what was taken, honoring both the mountain's gifts and his community's needs. With deliberate movements, Talon prepared himself, selecting a single deer from the herd, an older doe whose limp suggested age or injury would soon make her vulnerable to predators. Anyway, a merciful choice, a balanced one, drawing on skills his father had taught him. Long ago, he positioned himself downwind, approaching with patience until within range, his spear balanced in hands that, for the first time in his life, did not tremble. At the crucial moment, the crystal somehow stabilizing his condition, allowing precision he had never before experienced. The throw was clean true, bringing swift end without suffering. Talon immediately knelt beside his kill, offering words of gratitude to both the deer and the mountain for this necessary sacrifice. The white lion watched from its perch, neither approving nor condemning, simply witnessing Talon's choice, his balance between old ways and new understanding. After preparing the deer, preserving what meat he could carry, utilizing skills all Stonecrest children learned from earliest age, Talon continued his journey, now bearing both the crystal around his neck and traditional hunter's prize across his shoulders. The physical burden significant, yet somehow lighter than the weight of expectations he had carried all his life. The lion accompanied him until they reached the edge of familiar forests, the boundary beyond which Stonecrest hunters regularly traveled. There, the great cat paused clearly, unwilling to venture closer to a human settlement. Understanding dawned on Talon that their paths must now diverge. The lion, a guardian of the mountain's wilder reaches, he himself a bridge between those mysteries and his village's needs. Kneeling before the magnificent creature, he placed a hand on its massive shoulder, feeling the powerful muscles beneath the white fur, the connection between them transcending words. "Thank you," he said simply, inadequate, yet somehow sufficient. The lion pressed its forehead briefly against Talon's chest, where the crystal rested, a gesture of recognition, of blessing, before turning with fluid grace, padding silently back toward the higher slopes. The mountain mist soon enveloping its form, leaving Talon to complete his journey alone, yet forever changed. The approach to Stonecrest brought mixed emotions: anticipation, anxiety, determination, certainty. The village appearing smaller somehow after his experiences, the huts and walls that had once defined his entire world, now just one small community in a vast landscape, rich with possibilities. By tradition, hunters returned at sunset, the entire village gathering to witness their arrival, judge their success, assign their status, walking the final path toward the gates. Talon straightened his shoulders, adjusted his burden, both visible and invisible. The deer across his back, the crystal concealed beneath his tunic, for now. The knowledge, medicine, wisdom he carried, requiring proper time, place, manner of sharing. He arrived precisely at sunset, the last rays gilding the village walls with golden light. The community already gathered in the central square, other hunters having returned throughout the day displaying their prizes. Goran, prominent among them, standing beside an impressive elk carcass, exactly as he had pledged, surrounded by admirers. His status further elevated by his success, a hush fell as Talon approached his solitary figure, instantly recognized his return, clearly unexpected by many who had wagered against his survival. The elders, seated in their ceremonial places, Corval, at their center, watched with expressions ranging from surprise to skepticism, to veiled disappointment at the modest deer he carried compared to Goran's magnificent elk, Talon. Son of Elnar returns from the high peaks. Corval announced the formal recognition required by tradition. Present your prize for the village's judgment with dignity. Talon laid the deer before the elders, its preparation testament to his basic hunting skills. Even as its size paled beside the other offerings, Goran's mocking laughter broke the respectful silence. The weak hunter returns with a lame old doe, he called his voice, carrying across the gathering, barely worth the effort of carrying down the mountain. Is this your great triumph? Talon, proof of your worth as a hunter. His supporters joined in the mockery, the reaction Talon had anticipated, yet still felt as a sting against his pride. A true hunter returns with worthy prey. Corval stated the traditional judgment, his voice carrying neither cruelty nor compassion, merely stating the village's unchanging values. The council acknowledges your return, your survival of the mountain's challenges, but this offering does not meet the standard for hunter status. The formal words fell into silence. As the gathering waited for Talon's reaction, his acceptance of permanent assignment to the laborers' ranks instead, Talon straightened, meeting Corval's gaze directly, his hand moving to his tunic where the crystal rested against his skin, honored. Elder, the deer is not my true prize, merely sustenance gathered on my return journey. With deliberate movements, he withdrew the crystal, its light instantly visible, even in the fading daylight, pulsing with living energy. Unlike anything Stonecrest had seen before, gasps rose from the crowd as Talon held the crystal aloft, its glow intensifying as if responding to the attention, casting blue-white illumination across amazed faces. This is what the mountain offered me, Talon's voice carried clearly across the now silent gathering, not merely a hunter's prize, but a healer's gift. To demonstrate, he approached Kalen, one of the older council members, known to suffer from painful hands that twisted with age and cold, taking the elder's gnarled fingers between his own, the crystal glowing brighter as he channeled its energy combined with his knowledge of healing plants he had prepared during his journey. The transformation was immediately visible to all watching Kalen's fingers, straightening the elder's expression, shifting from skepticism to wonder to profound relief. What magic is this? Corval demanded. Rising from his seat, eyes fixed on Kalen's now straightened hands, the elder flexing fingers that had been locked in. Pain for years, not magic, Talon replied, his voice steady with newfound confidence. Knowledge, gift, harmony with the mountain itself. He turned, addressing the gathered village, his trembling hands now steady as they held the crystal. I went seeking to prove myself as a hunter, but the mountain revealed a different path, a different strength, one that complements rather than replaces our traditional ways. I return not as the hunter you expected, but as something else, something the mountain itself has chosen. Goran's face contorted with rage as he watched the elder flex his once gnarled fingers in disbelief. Tricks and women's magic, he spat. While real hunters provide food and protection, you bring us stones. But Talon could see the fear. Behind Goran's anger, the recognition that something fundamental was shifting, that the measure of a man's worth in their village would never be quite the same again. A hush fell over the gathering, Kalen still examining his healed hands with wonder. Corval clearly unsure how to proceed in the face of something outside traditional protocol. The villagers whispering among themselves, some fearful, others curious. all transfixed by the glowing crystal and its demonstrated power. Talon's mother pushed through the crowd, tears streaming down her face as she embraced her son. "You found it," she whispered. "You found what your father discovered." Her words confirming what Talon had suspected, that she had known, or at least suspected the truth of his father's fate all along, had guided him subtly toward his own journey of discovery, Mara. The healer approached next, her weathered face alight with validation. "I knew. The mountain had chosen you," she said, examining the crystal with professional interest. "Your hands never trembled when working with plants, only when trying to force yourself into a hunter's mold." She turned to Corval and the council, her voice carrying the weight of a respected position. "This is a gift greater than any game. This young man brings medicine knowledge beyond what I could teach in a lifetime. The ability to heal ailments we have always considered beyond help." She gestured toward Kalen. "See for yourselves the proof." Corval raised his hands for silence, the crowd gradually stilling. "These are serious claims," he said, his voice measured. "Powerful magic, if true, dangerous deception, if false." He studied Talon with new intensity. "Explain yourself, young man. What happened on the mountain? What is this crystal? How came you by such power? And what of your father, whose body was never found?" The questions tumbling forth now that the initial shock had passed, Talon took a deep breath, the crystal warm against his palm, steadying him as he prepared to share truths that would forever change his standing in the village, for better or worse. "I climbed to the highest peaks as challenged," he began, his voice carrying clearly. "In the hushed square. There I discovered caves ancient and sacred at their heart, a chamber of crystals where the mountain's pulse beat strongest." He described his journey in measured terms, the fall that had led him deeper, the visions, the meeting with the mountain spirit, the revelation about his father's choice to remain as guardian, the gift freely given in exchange for blood and oath, the knowledge that his trembling hands were not weakness, but sensitivity to energies others could not perceive. Throughout his account, the crystal pulsed with light, seeming to affirm his words, its rhythm matching his heartbeat, visible to all watching. When he finished, silence hung heavy, broken, finally by an elder woman, her voice cracking with age. "My grandmother spoke of crystal keepers, those chosen by the mountain, to bridge the worlds of healing and hunting, to maintain balance when our people strayed too far toward taking without giving." Murmurs spread through the crowd as older villagers recalled similar stories, legends dismissed as children's tales, now standing before them incarnate in a young man they had always underestimated. "Is this true, Corval?" another elder asked. "Do our oldest stories speak of such things?" The head elder nodded reluctantly. "There are such tales, yes, passed down from the time before Stonecrest was founded, when our people first came to the mountain's shadow." Goran stepped forward, his face dark with challenge. "Stories and legends, pretty lights and mysteriously healed hands," he scoffed. "Convenient magic that cannot be verified." He turned, addressing the crowd directly. "While I tracked and killed the great elk, providing meat that will feed many families, Talon wandered the mountain gathering plants and pebbles, women's work," he spat the words, "and now returns with fantastical tales, expecting to be elevated above his station." His supporters nodded, some calling out agreement, the division Talon had anticipated beginning to form between those open to new possibilities and those invested in maintaining traditional hierarchies. "I make no claim to status above any hunter." Talon responded calmly. "The mountain teaches balance, not superiority. My gifts complement yours. Goran, rather than replacing them. Stonecrest needs both meat and medicine protection and healing. Those who take and those who give back," he held the crystal higher, its light intensifying. "I offer this gift freely to any who need healing. Ask nothing in return, except recognition that different strengths serve our village in different ways, all valuable, all worthy of respect." His words resonated with many, especially those who had suffered injuries or ailments conventional wisdom deemed untreatable, the possibility of relief from chronic pain, drawing them toward this new hope. Corval consulted quietly with the other elders before raising his staff for attention. "These matters require careful consideration," he announced. "The council will deliberate on what we have witnessed, what we have heard." He turned to Talon. "You will remain in the village pending our decision. Demonstrate these healing abilities to Mara and any elder who wishes to observe. A diplomatic solution, preserving the council's authority while acknowledging the potential value of Talon's gift. As for status," Corval continued, "that too will be determined after proper investigation." With that, he declared the gathering concluded, instructing the hunters to deliver their game to the village storehouse. The crowd slowly dispersing, buzzing with excitement, confusion, speculation. Lon found himself surrounded by villagers, some seeking immediate healing for long-standing ailments, others simply curious, wanting to see the crystal up close, hear more details of his journey. His mother and Mara creating a protective buffer, helping organize the requests, ensuring he wasn't overwhelmed. As night fell, proper celebrations began for the successful hunters, mead flowing freely around cooking fires, where Garan held court, recounting his elk hunt to admiring listeners. Yet Talon noticed many glancing his way, the village's attention divided between traditional success and mysterious new possibility, between the known path and the unexplored one he represented. Later, his mother prepared a simple meal in their hut. Talon, finally able to rest, after tending to several villagers with various complaints from arthritic joints to poorly healed breaks. "Your father would be proud," she said, setting a bowl before him. "He always saw something in you that others missed." Talon studied her face in the firelight. "You knew," he said, not accusingly, but seeking confirmation. "You knew he chose to stay with the mountain." She nodded slowly, not with certainty, but I suspected felt it somehow when they brought back only his broken spear, not his body. She touched the crystal gently. "He found this place too, didn't he? This is why you gave me Mara's herbs, why you encouraged me to follow my own path." Elnar spoke of crystals that sang to him, of caves that pulsed with life, she admitted. The others thought it merely hunters' tales, but I saw the change in him after each journey to the high peaks, saw how his understanding of the mountain deepened. She smiled sadly. "When you were born with the trembling hands, he said it was a gift, not a curse, that someday you would understand why." Talon absorbed this revelation, pieces falling into place, the sense of connection to his father stronger now, understanding that his journey had been guided subtly over many years, preparation for the moment when the mountain would call him to, "Will you stay in Stonecrest?" His mother asked the question that had lingered unspoken. Now that you've found your true path, Talon considered remembering Kaelin's offer of welcome in Ridge Crest, the freedom of the mountain with the White Lion as companion, the limitations and prejudices of Stonecrest balanced against the community that had shaped him, the people who, despite their flaws, were his people. "That depends on what path the village chooses," he answered finally. "Whether there is place here for a crystal keeper alongside the hunters, whether Stonecrest can expand its understanding of strength and value." The crystal pulsed gently against his chest as if in agreement. The decision not his alone, but part of a larger balancing still unfolding between tradition and transformation, between what had always been and what might yet become. The following days brought a steady stream of villagers to Mara's hut, where Talon demonstrated his healing abilities under her watchful eye, the crystal's power combined with his knowledge of plants, producing results that left even the skeptical healer speechless. Broken bones that had never set properly began to straighten chronic pains that had plagued elders for decades, eased festering wounds, cleaned and closed with remarkable speed. Word spread beyond Stonecrest itself, bringing visitors from neighboring settlements seeking relief from ailments long considered beyond help. Talon worked tirelessly, his formerly trembling hands now steady and sure. When channeling the crystal's energy, each healing, strengthening his connection to the gift, each grateful patient building his acceptance among those who had once dismissed him. Not all welcomed this change. Goran and his supporters maintained their distance, viewing Talon's abilities with suspicion, speaking in hushed tones of mountain spirits and dangerous magic, maintaining that traditional hunting remained the true measure of a man's worth in Stonecrest society. The village balanced on a knife edge between embracing this new possibility and rejecting it as threat to established order. Talon himself focused simply on healing, helping, teaching what he had learned, sharing the knowledge of rich hunting grounds he had discovered during his journey with the White Lion, information that even Goran reluctantly acknowledged as valuable when scouts confirmed the abundance awaiting in valleys few had previously explored on the fifth day. Following Talon's return, Corval summoned him to the council circle, the elders having reached some decision regarding his status within. The village he approached with outward calm, though his heart raced with uncertainty. The crystal, a reassuring weight against his chest, his mother and Mara flanking him in silent support. The square filled quickly with villagers eager to witness. This unprecedented judgment Goran positioned prominently among his fellow hunters, his expression unreadable, though the tension in his stance revealed his investment in the outcome. Talon stood before the seated elders, waiting as Corval raised his staff for silence. "We have witnessed remarkable things," the head elder began, his voice carrying across the hushed gathering. "Healing beyond what our village has known, gifts that challenge our understanding of the mountain's ways," he surveyed. The assembled villagers, "Our traditions are the foundation of Stonecrest. They have ensured our survival through countless winters, guided our people through hardship and plenty alike." Murmurs of agreement rose from the traditionalists, Goran nodding emphatically. Yet traditions that cannot accommodate new knowledge become chains rather than supports, binding us to the past rather than guiding us toward the future. This statement drew surprised glances, some elders shifting uncomfortably at such unprecedented philosophy from their leader. Corval turned his attention directly to Talon. "You sought to prove yourself as a hunter, returned instead with different gifts no less valuable, different strengths no less needed." He gestured toward several villagers who had received healing. "The council has deliberated, consulted our oldest stories, remembered legends of crystal keepers from the time of our ancestors." He paused significantly. "We have decided to create a new position within Stonecrest, equal to that of hunter, neither above nor below, but alongside guardian of the mountain's crystal wisdom, healer, teacher, keeper of balance between taking and giving back." Gasps and murmurs spread through the crowd. Such fundamental change to village structure unprecedented in living memory. "Do you accept this responsibility?" "Talon, son of Elnar?" Corval asked formally. "Do you pledge to use these gifts for Stonecrest's benefit, to honor the mountain's wisdom, to maintain balance between our needs and the mountain's gifts?" Talon stepped forward, the crystal glowing visibly even in daylight, seeming to respond to the moment's significance. "I accept," he replied, his voice steady, clear. "I pledge to serve as crystal keeper, to heal, to teach, to remind our people that strength takes many forms, all worthy of respect." Corval nodded, satisfied, then turned to address a different quarter of the gathering. "Goran, approach." He commanded the successful hunter, moving forward with obvious reluctance, positioning himself beside Talon. The contrast between them, striking muscle and crystal, traditional and transformative, two visions of Stonecrest's future standing side by side. "As late hunter, you too have responsibility," Corval told Goran, "to work alongside the crystal keeper, not against him, to recognize that Stonecrest requires both your strengths to survive and prosper." Goran's jaw tightened, visibly struggling with this public challenge to his assumption of primacy. The mountain provides game and crystal healing and sustenance protection and wisdom, Corval continued. We diminish ourselves when we value one gift above another. He looked between the two young men. Do you accept this balance, Goran, son of Thorvald? Do you pledge to respect the Crystal Keeper's place among us even as we honor your skills as hunter? A tense silence fell, all eyes on Goran, whose ambition and pride were well known, whose disdain for Talon had been openly displayed for years, whose definition of worth had been fundamentally challenged by recent events. For a long moment, he stood rigid with resistance, then slowly, almost imperceptibly nodded. I accept, he said, the words emerging with obvious difficulty, though I maintain that hunting provides what crystals cannot: food, protection, physical strength. Talon surprised everyone by speaking directly to his longtime antagonist, just as crystals provide what hunting cannot: healing, renewal, connection to the mountains deeper. Wisdom, he extended his hand. Different strengths, different gifts, both needed, both valuable. Goran hesitated, then briefly clasped Talon's offered hand, the gesture symbolic rather than heartfelt, yet significant. Nonetheless, a beginning, however tenuous. A recognition, however reluctant, that Stonecrest's future might require more than one definition of strength. Corval struck his staff against the ground 3 times, the traditional signal that council decisions had been formalized. Let it be known, throughout Stonecrest and beyond, he announced, that we recognize both Hunter and Crystal Keeper as valued protectors of our people, that we honor both traditions established and wisdom newly discovered, that our village embraces balance in all things as the mountain itself has taught us. The gathering dispersed, some celebrating others, muttering discontent. Change, even positive, rarely welcomed universally. Especially when challenging long-standing hierarchies, Talon found himself surrounded by well-wishers, many who had previously ignored or mocked him, now eager to claim connection to the newly established Crystal Keeper. Their sudden attention, both gratifying and slightly unsettling in its transparency. Mara pulled him aside, her eyes twinkling with satisfaction. I always knew you would find your path, she said, though even I didn't imagine how dramatically you would transform our understanding of strength. She glanced toward Goran, who stood with his hunting companions, their expressions still reflecting skepticism. Not everyone will accept this change immediately. Some may never truly embrace it. The council's decision is just the beginning. The real work lies ahead. Talon nodded, understanding her wisdom. Balance isn't achieved in a single moment, he agreed, but maintained through constant attention, adjustment, recognition of when we've strayed too far in either direction. He touched the crystal briefly, drawing comfort from its steady warmth. My father understood. This chose to remain with the mountain, perhaps knowing someday the village would need reminding of these truths. Mara studied him with newfound respect. You've gained wisdom beyond your years on that mountain, she observed. Wisdom Stonecrest will need in the seasons ahead. She didn't elaborate, but Talon sensed her meaning. Changes, once begun, rarely remained contained, unpredictable in their unfolding, challenging to navigate, requiring both traditional strength and new understanding, working in concert rather than opposition. Evening approached. Talon sought solitude, slipping away from the continuing discussions to climb the small rise behind the village, looking out toward the mountain peaks, now bathed in sunset's golden light. The crystal seemed to pulse more strongly when facing its source, a reminder of connection, of purpose, of the journey still unfolding before him despite the council's acceptance. He knew challenges remained, Goran's reluctant acknowledgement. More political than genuine, the village's adjustment to new possibilities. Just beginning the balance between his new role and traditional structures, requiring constant attention, negotiation, patience. Yet for the first time since childhood, Talon felt truly at home in his own skin, his trembling hands now steady with purpose, his path clear before him. his worth defined not by others' limitations, but by the mountain's wider wisdom, the crystal warm against his heart, beating in time with his own pulse, a constant reminder that true strength often comes disguised as weakness, that what others reject the mountain embraces that balance once found, must be maintained through constant vigilance and open hearts. Autumn's golden touch transformed the forests surrounding Stonecrest, signaling the approaching winter. With each passing day, temperatures dropped, leaves fell hunting. Parties worked with increasing urgency to secure meat that would sustain the village through the cold months ahead. Talon settled into his new role, establishing a small healing space alongside Mara's hut. Learning from her traditional remedies while teaching her the crystal's applications, creating a partnership that bridged generations of knowledge, he divided his time between treating ailments, developing medicines, and accompanying hunting parties, not to throw spears, but to guide them to the abundant grounds he had discovered during his mountain journey. His formerly useless trembling hands now recognized as uniquely attuned to the land's subtle energies, allowing him to sense game movements, water sources, weather changes before others could perceive them. Most hunters gradually accepted his presence, recognizing the practical value of his abilities, allowing old prejudices to fade in the face of increased success, fuller bags, easier tracking the crystal around his neck, no longer drawing suspicious glances, but accepted as simply another tool like bow or spear. Some, like Goran, maintained a distance, their acceptance perfunctory, their interactions with Talon correct but cold, unwilling to fully embrace the village's expanded definition of strength. Yet even they could not deny the benefits his knowledge brought, nor the healing he provided when injuries occurred in the field. Talon, for his part, sought neither approval nor friendship, simply fulfillment of his pledge to serve Stonecrest through his gifts, allowing actions rather than words to demonstrate. His value as preparations for winter intensified. Word reached the village of a massive storm approaching earlier than usual, threatening to catch hunting parties. Still in the field council, messengers were dispatched, warnings spread, preparations accelerated. Talon felt the coming danger through the crystal, its pulsing growing more urgent when he faced the northern mountains, where weather patterns formed his warnings, adding weight to the messenger's reports. 3 hunting parties remained in distant valleys, including Goran's group, tracking the season's final elk herd, the storm's unusual timing placing them at significant risk if caught unprepared. In higher elevations, we must send a warning party, Talon urged the council gathered. In emergency session, the storm brings not just snow, but killing cold. I can feel it through the crystal. Corval nodded gravely. Who would you send, Crystal Keeper, when all experienced hunters are either already in the field or needed here to secure the village? The question highlighted the practical limitations facing them. Talon touched the crystal, drawing clarity from its energy. I will go, he said simply. I know these mountains better than anyone. Now can travel paths others would miss. Can find Goran's party using the crystal's guidance. His words met with immediate protest, concerns for his safety. The village's need for his healing skills, should the storm bring injuries or illness. The mountain showed me these paths for a reason. Talon countered, perhaps this is why to serve as bridge between village and wilderness, between hunters and home, when danger threatens. He looked directly at Corval. A crystal keeper who remains always within safe walls serves only half his purpose. The elder studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Wisdom in those words. There is risk? Yes, but greater risk in leaving our hunters uninformed. He turned to the gathered council. Prepare supplies for Talon's journey, fastest path to reach. Goran's party then return ahead of the storm's full fury. Preparations began immediately. Warm furs, dried food, emergency medicines. Talon working alongside the others, his focus absolute. His connection to the crystal. Guiding his selections, Dawn found him at the village gate, his mother embracing him fiercely. Return safely, she whispered. One journey to the mountain was enough worry for a mother's heart. Talon held her briefly. "The crystal will guide me," he assured her. "I follow paths, Father." Discovered paths. The mountain revealed trust in this. Releasing her, he turned toward the forests, the rising sun catching the crystal's fasts, sending rainbow light dancing across fresh snow, the first dusting of what would soon become meters deep. His pace swift sure, following routes no conventional hunter would recognize, sensing the storm's approach through the crystal's increasingly urgent pulsing, the mountain itself seeming to communicate through this connection, urging speed, caution. Awareness by midday, Talon had covered ground that would take conventional routes 2 days, the crystal warming when he chose correct paths, cooling when he strayed its guidance, allowing him to move efficiently through difficult terrain. As the sky darkened with approaching storm clouds, he sensed Goran's hunting party nearby, their trail visible to his enhanced perception, cutting across a valley toward higher elevations. Precisely the wrong direction, given what was coming. He adjusted his course to intercept them, pushing harder as the first heavy snowflakes began to fall, the wind rising ominously, temperature plummeting with alarming speed, the storm's edge reaching him hours before its full force would descend. He found them at dusk. Goran and 4 other hunters tracking an elk herd, unaware of the danger building behind the mountain ridge, their surprise at his appearance quickly shifting to annoyance at what they perceived as interference. The Crystal Keeper graces us with his presence. Goran called his tone mocking, come to teach real hunters their business. Talon ignored the barb, focusing on their survival. A killing storm approaches, he explained, pointing toward the darkening horizon where clouds built like mountains themselves. The council sent me to warn you, guide you to shelter, before it strikes full force. The other hunters exchanged concerned glances, even Goran's expression sobering as he studied the ominous sky. We're close to the largest elk of the season, he countered, though, with less conviction. We return empty-handed, and winter stores suffer. Talon shook his head. You return not at all if caught in what comes. He held up the crystal, now pulsing visibly with urgent energy. There's a cave system half a day's journey south, sheltered valley wood for firewater from underground spring. We can wait out the worst there, then return together. Goran's pride warred visibly with practical necessity, the other hunters already gathering. Their gear convinced by Talon's warning and the rapidly deteriorating conditions, the herd will be there after the storm. Talon added, the crystal can help locate them more efficiently than traditional tracking once it's safe to hunt again, reluctantly. Goran nodded, sharp gesture, acknowledging the inevitable. Lead on then, Crystal Keeper. Prove your worth beyond pretty lights and healing touches. The challenge, clear in his voice, the old rivalry still burning, despite months of cautious coexistence. In Stonecrest, Talon simply turned south, the crystal guiding him, the hunting party following. As snow began falling more heavily, wind whipping between trees, temperature dropping precipitously with each passing hour, the storms advanced far faster than normal, even Talon's enhanced senses challenged by the rapidly deteriorating visibility. The crystal, their primary guide, its light, penetrating the growing gloom, showing safe passages through increasingly treacherous terrain. Night fell, bringing near blizzard conditions, the hunting party struggling to maintain formation, Talon constantly checking, ensuring no one fell behind, using the crystal's light as beacon through darkness and swirling snow. When one hunter stumbled, twisted his ankle, Talon immediately stopped with administered crystal-enhanced medicine that allowed continued movement, though at slower pace, their progress frustratingly deliberate in the face of mounting danger. The cave system still hours away at their current speed. We need better shelter now, Talon called, above the wind's howl, scanning their surroundings with crystal-enhanced perception, temporary refuge until daylight. Goran appeared at his side, face crusted with ice features, barely visible in the storm. "Your miraculous crystal offering any suggestions?" he asked, no mockery. Now just pragmatic necessity, survival trumping pride. Talon held the crystal higher, its light illuminating a nearby ridge. "There," he pointed, natural overhang, rock face blocking. Northern wind, defensible space for fire. Without waiting for discussion, he changed direction, leading them toward this temporary haven, the crystal pulsing encouragement. The hunting party following, without question, even Goran recognizing that traditional skills meant little against the mountain's unleashed fury, that survival now depended on gifts he had once dismissed as weaknesses. The storm of change descended upon the mountain, both physical and metaphorical. The hunters of Stonecrest found themselves depending on the very powers they had once rejected, the crystal keeper they had mocked, now their guide through darkness. The trembling hands they had derided, now steady with purpose, leading them toward safety. When all familiar paths disappeared, beneath wind-driven snow, Talon felt the weight of responsibility, the crystal's warmth against his chest, both burden and blessing. The mountain's test not yet complete, its lessons still unfolding through wind and ice, through pride and necessity, through the slow transformation of hearts long closed to possibilities beyond their limited understanding. They reached the overhang just as the storm unleashed its full fury, winds howling with supernatural strength, driving snow so thick it formed white walls around them, visibility reduced to arm's length, the temperature plummeting to deadly levels. Talon immediately organized their survival. Each hunter assigned crucial tasks, collecting wood before it became completely buried, creating windbreaks, preparing a fire pit in the most protected corner of their shelter. The crystal's light, their primary illumination in the deepening darkness, its warmth seeming to extend beyond the physical, creating a pocket of relative comfort. In the midst of nature's onslaught, once the fire caught, driving back the most immediate threat of freezing Talon, turned his attention to the injured hunter, examining the swollen ankle with gentle hands, the crystal pulsing as he worked, ligaments torn, not broken. He diagnosed, applying medicine from his supplies, then binding the injury with practiced efficiency. "Rest, keep elevated near fire." The hunter nodded gratefully, relief evident as the crystal-enhanced herbs began reducing both pain and swelling. The others watched with newfound respect, even Goran's skepticism temporarily suspended in the face of practical necessity. Survival in the mountain's harshest conditions, requiring all available skills, both traditional and mystical, working in concertus. The night deepened, the storm intensified. Beyond anything in living memory, the hunters huddled around their fire, sharing dried meat and stories to keep spirits elevated. Talon maintained his position slightly apart, monitoring both the crystal and their surroundings, sensing shifts in the storm's patterns, watching for dangers beyond the obvious. Suddenly, the crystal flared with warning, pulsing urgently against his chest, seconds before an ominous crack sounded above them. "Move!" Talon shouted, lunging toward the fire, grabbing the injured hunter, dragging him toward the outer edge of their shelter as tons of snow released from the ridge above crashed down precisely where they had been sitting, the overhang that had protected them now threatening to become their tomb. Chaos erupted, hunters scrambling in darkness, the fire extinguished. By the avalanche's edge, disorientation immediate in the pitch-black confines of their now compromised shelter, the crystal. Goran's voice cut through the panic. "Follow Talon's light." The unexpected command from his longtime rival momentarily startled Talon before he raised the crystal high, its blue-white illumination cutting through darkness, revealing their situation. The back half of the shelter now completely filled with snow, their space reduced by half, the temperature already dropping precipitously without the fire. "We need to dig out, secure the space," Talon directed, using the crystal to examine the snowpack, carefully structured, not randomly. Another collapse could bury us completely. Working together, hunters and crystal keeper, established a new perimeter, rebuilt their fire, created a more defensible position against the continuing storm, the shared crisis, erasing momentary boundaries between old roles and new. The value of each man's contribution measured not by tradition, but by immediate effect on their collective survival. As they settled again around the rekindled flames, Goran moved to sit beside Talon, their shoulders nearly touching in unprecedented proximity. "You saved Kalen's life," he said, simply nodding. Toward the injured hunter, now sleeping near the fire. "Warned us before any of us heard the snow coming, Hadalon." Touched the crystal, considering how to explain something that defied conventional understanding. The crystal senses shifts in the Mui. Mountains' energy, avalanches, storms, animal movements all create patterns the trained eye can't see, but sensitive hands can feel. He held out his palms, the tremor visible. Though mild in the firelight, what Stonecrest called weakness was actually a attunement to these energies. My father recognized this, tried to teach me, but I was too focused on becoming what the village expected, a traditional hunter throwing straight spears, bringing down game, proving worth through killing rather than understanding. Goran was silent for a long moment, staring into the flames. "And I was too focused on maintaining the only definition of strength I understood," he admitted quietly, too threatened by any suggestion that worth might be measured differently. He glanced. "At Talon, the mountain teaches harsh lessons." Talon nodded. "To both of us, it seems one through crystal, one through storm. But perhaps the same lesson ultimately: balance, respect, recognition that different strengths serve different purposes, all necessary, all valuable." Something shifted between them in that moment. Not friendship exactly, but understanding, recognition that the village's future depended on both their gifts. Working in harmony rather than opposition, dawn brought marginal improvement. In conditions, though the storm continued unabated, Talon sensed a temporary lull approaching. "We have a window," he announced, after consulting the crystal, 3 hours perhaps to reach the cave system before the storm intensifies again. The hunters prepared quickly, respecting his assessment without question. Now even Goran deferring to his judgment on matters concerning the mountain's moods they traveled. In tight formation, Talon leading crystal held high, illuminating the safest path through. Snow-transformed landscape, Kalen supported between two fellow hunters, managing remarkable pace given his injury, the group's efficiency, born of shared purpose, transcending old rivalries, new definition of strength, emerging through necessity cooperation. Survival? They reached the caves with the storm's second wave nipping at their heels. More spacious than the overhang, with multiple chambers, natural ventilation that allowed proper fire-abundant wood, stored by previous travelers, perhaps even Talons. Father preparing for future need. The crystal's light revealed ancient paintings on the walls, similar to those Talon had seen during his original journey, hunters and healers working together, receiving the mountain's varied gifts, scenes that seemed prophetic now as Stonecrest's traditional hunters and newly recognized Crystal Keeper established their temporary haven against the storm's fury. 3 days they remained, while winter unleashed its opening salvo against the mountain. The time spent not in conflict but conversation, Goran asking increasingly thoughtful questions about the crystal's powers, Talon explaining without condescension, sharing knowledge while acknowledging the continuing value of traditional hunting skills. Each man gradually recognizing the other's strengths, each finding unexpected common ground in their shared dedication to Stonecrest's welfare. By the time conditions allowed their return journey, subtle but significant transformation had occurred, not just in their relationship, but in the hunters' collective understanding of value, strength, purpose. The mountain's lesson delivered through crisis, received through necessity. Their return to Stonecrest caused jubilation, the village having feared them, lost to the unprecedented storm, Corval greeting them at the gates, relief evident in his weathered face. "The Crystal Keeper found us, guided us through impossible conditions," Goran announced before Talon could speak. "Without his warning, his abilities, we would not stand before you now." The public acknowledgement from his former rival left Talon momentarily speechless. The sincere respect in Goran's voice, worth more than any formal council declaration, more significant than any official status. "We return with new understanding," Goran continued, addressing the gathered villagers, "that Stonecrest's strength lies not in maintaining old divisions, but in recognizing how hunting skill and crystal wisdom complement each other, how together they ensure our survival in ways neither could alone." The following days brought practical implementation of this new philosophy: joint planning sessions between hunters and healers, coordination of efforts, integration of knowledge, the storm having accelerated what might otherwise have taken generations of gradual change. Talon established formal training for those showing sensitivity to the crystal's energy. Several younger villagers discovered to possess mild versions of his once mocked trembling hands, now recognized as potential crystal keepers themselves. Goran, meanwhile, reorganized hunting protocols to incorporate Talon's knowledge of the mountain's hidden abundance, creating sustainable practices that honored both villager needs and natural balance, the traditional and the transformative no longer in opposition, but in harmony. Spring found Talon standing on the mountain's lower slopes. The valley below, vibrant with new growth, Stonecrest, visibly thriving under its expanded definition of strength, its embracing of balance. The crystal warm against his chest, a familiar presence approached the white lion, materializing from the forest, its coat gleaming in morning sunlight, its amber eyes regarding Talon with intelligence. Recognition. "I understand now," Talon said softly to his former guide, "why my father remained with the mountain, why you showed me the paths I needed to follow, the lessons I needed to learn." The great cat blinked slowly in acknowledgement before turning its gaze toward the higher peaks where mysteries still waited, discoveries yet to be made, journeys yet to be undertaken. "I will return sometimes," Talon promised, both to the lion and to the mountain itself, to learn more, to maintain connection, to honor what you've given. The crystal pulsed in agreement, its energy a constant reminder that true strength often comes disguised as weakness, that rejected gifts often hold the greatest value, that the mountain reveals different paths to different hearts, each necessary, each worthy, each part of the delicate balance between taking and giving, between old wisdom and new, between the steady hand and the tremble.